It is known and clear, historically and realistically, that the unity of Syria represents a major obstacle to all the enemies of the nation, most notably, of course, the Zionist occupation in Palestine. For this reason, no matter how much the great powers said that we want a united Syria, this is deception and misleading. No one ever wants Syria to be one and unified except those who support her aren't opposing the nation. We presented an episode on the channel a few days ago entitled "The Conspiracy to Divide Syria" or "The Conspiracy to Divide Syria Began," and we said from the beginning that it was the events of As-Suwayda with the Druze density, which I believe are fabricated events, and this major escalation that we saw occurred and a number of killers drew attention. The Jews moved and bombed the Syrian tanks heading to As-Suwayda and bombed Damascus itself, the military staff. Now we hear two very dangerous news, meaning in the midst of these events, escalations, temporary ceasefire and ceasefire violations more than once. We heard two very dangerous news. The first news is that the Druze community in Syria called on the countries guaranteeing the ceasefire for international intervention to protect the lessons in Syria. This means foreign intervention. They are calling for foreign intervention in Syria, so with the utmost clarity and frankness. Of course, intervention is often primarily American. I ransomed the first very, very dangerous appeal to the Druze with an invitation. The West wants them to protect the Druze inside Syria and thus pave the way for dividing the Suwayda, Daraa, the Damascus countryside and the Golan into a special state for the Druze. The second matter, the second news, which is also dangerous, is the declaration of more than 2,000 Druze who live in Palestine and with them Israeli citizenship. They have to sign a document stating that they are ready to cross the border and enter Syria. Alongside their brothers from the lessons, there are already a number of them infiltrating from the Golan to the Druze, but in the dozens. But now we say more than 2,000 of the 2,000 people in it, including Israeli reserve soldiers. This means that the Druze have no problem joining the Israeli army, nor does the Israeli army accept them in. In his army, I mean in which of them? From the Israeli army, he volunteers to fight in Syria alongside the Druze in Syria. It's next to it. You find signs of the desire to form a state separate from the state of Syria that have begun to be implemented on the ground visibly and clearly. Some wonder why the Druze do this when they are Syrians. I mean, if you are a Syrian, how can you call on non-Syrians to intervene in Syria with this letter? The truth is that the problem of Syria is close to the problem of Lebanon. The problem of Lebanon is that we have been briefed on. Be more as a result of the bloody events that occurred in Lebanon over the past 50 years. But the circumstances of Syria, I see, are even more complex than those of Lebanon. But I mean, Lebanon, as you know, has Sunnis, Shiites 12, and has our sources. The majority of Christians are Moors, and there are many other things, including Catholics, Orthodox, Druze, and many other sects. These sects are not similar to some of them. There are radical differences between them. Ideological, religious, political, intellectual, social, ethnic, racial, meaning all kinds of differences. There is no real homogeneity between the sects living in Lebanon, and also there is no homogeneity between the sects living in Syria, which is why the civil wars that occurred in Lebanon occur from 75 to 15 consecutive years. 15 years of continuous war. Why? Because the environments in which they were raised are different from each other. The references are different. The beliefs are different. Temporary wars are sacred in the eyes of some, intellectual among others, as they have no opportunity to meet. So wars happen, wars continue, and the numbers of wars are dwindling. The civil war in Lebanon is under 20,000 who died. Of course, numbers in Syria are much larger. In Syria, the same situation exists, and more complicated because the regime that ruled Syria, before that, the regime that ruled Syria. Al-Alawi is that I will rule from the year 70 to the year 2024, speaking for 54 years, and a minority controls the majority. In order for the minority to rule, the majority needs balances. So people have grown up and people have become small, and unrest has been created among people. Because it always creates enmity between the different sects. So it controls this large mixture. Someone gathers and turns against it, so it means very, very dangerous social changes in Syria, which continued for consecutive decades. We are talking about 54 years of rule. Inside this regime are the Druze, and each team of these regimes is looking for a sponsor, and this sponsor may remain from outside the country, or often he is from outside the country. Why does every team have an external supporter? When an opportunity arises, it remains like this. It remains a very big disaster. The Druze who call for support is clearly a graduate. Israel is like this. I mean, they do not hide this information if their main supporter is Israel. It may surprise you to see Muslims and Jews collaborating. Are they not Muslims? They are not Muslims. They are sometimes counted in some studies on Muslims, but they are not Muslims. And this is not infidelity. I mean, this is actually a completely different faith other than Muslims, which means they are. They do not say that God Almighty is one, and if they are, they call themselves monotheists. Rather, they deify the ruler by God's command. They are a sect that splits from Ismailianism. Ismailianism, in fact, has no one among Muslims to admit them to Islam. These people remain dissidents from Ismailia and also change the thought of Ismailia. So they continue to reduce the ruler by the command of God, who is the ancient Fatimid al-Ubaidi Caliph. I mean, they have prophets of their own. They have 5 prophets of their own. We do not know 55 of them, and they are protected by 7 real uncles, including Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace. The number of those between them is 12, and there are some of them. The sects of them interfere. Salman al-Farsi and Muhammad bin Ismail al-Sadiq, like prophets too. I mean, they do not require prayer, fasting during Ramadan, zakat or Hajj. Where is Islam? Mama, they don't really have anything to do with Islam. I mean, they are a sect like the Baha'is and the Qadnis. They have their own prophet. They have certain situations, certain legislation and esoteric books that no one knows what they look like. I mean, they are non-Muslims. The Druze primarily reside in Syria as part of 3 countries. Today there are 700,000 in As-Suwayda and about 1,000, meaning all of them in total 300,000, other than the 700,000 living in the Damascus countryside, living in the Golan, living in Dara, in some southern regions. So we are talking about 1,000, one of whom lives in Syria and Lebanon, where 400,000 Druze, and Palestine, of course, is inside the Israeli occupation, 152,000 of whom live. And they are afraid, as we said, in the Israeli army, they do not have a problem. And some of them are still a few living in Jordan, and some of them are immigrants to Europe, America, and West Africa. The total Druze in the whole world is from 1.12 to 2,000 people. The big problem is that they have a state in history, meaning they succeeded in establishing a state under the French mandate in Syria from the year 21 to the year 36 to 50. It is an experience, and in this same place where they are now, the Druze mountain and what surrounds it, it is an experience. The establishment of a separate state for them exists in history, and as we said, they have no problem joining the Israeli army. The Israeli army can defend them. From this standpoint, and the 2,000 people who want to come and fight with them will remain a nail in the coffin. For the Jews, these will remain 2,000 Israelis. They are As-Suwayda. The Israeli armies will be afraid to defend the 2,000 Divlet and the other Druze in the region. Accustomed to civil wars, Druze historically fought not only Muslims but also Maronites in Lebanon. Since the year 1008, 1061, there has been a war that lasted 20 years between the Druze and the Maronites. They are not fighting sects that are ethnically, religiously, and racially different from them in various ways. As you can clearly see, the situation in Syria is difficult. We ask God Almighty for the safety and preservation of Syria. The situation is very, very difficult. And as I said in the Sykes-Picot episode before, and I also said in the episode, a conspiracy began to divide Syria because of it. Preserve Syria one, the entire people must stand behind one regime, and this regime is so that you know that the entire people sacrifice in order to preserve it. This regime must be an elected regime, whether it is the president or the People's Assembly, the Shura Council or the local councils. All of this must be elected, so that the entire people are one flesh, standing behind one entity. When there is one victor, he takes power without it. Universal popular support remains very easy to penetrate. It is very easy if they die during the day of the system other than institutional work. That's why they struck next to the presidential palace to tell the Syrian president that he is capable of hitting him with a missile or a bullet, and the issue ended. That's it. The entire system fell. The work was not institutional, not linked to the life of one person or another. And a person died, the one behind him is caught because there is an entity that brings together. All people are organized, specific and explained. The whole people, everyone is standing behind him too. I hope that the displaced Syrians are outside him. Syria, who are of course 1,000 as far as they can, are returning to the country. I know the issue is difficult economically, politically and socially, but every difficult need without their return will be the establishment of Syria, which means a problem in it. But of course, when they return, they will say with the hands of their brothers, in the country, we can stop in the face of these major crises. And the last thing, of course, is likely for Syria, that it is seeking a very strong unity with the Arab countries. Syria's surroundings, especially heavy countries. The great one, because alone in the face of these divisive trends inside the country and conspiracy from outside it, it will be very, very difficult. It is facing this powerful attack, so we ask God Almighty to preserve Syria and unite the ranks of Muslims. May God reward you well, and may God's peace, mercy and blessings be upon you.